Well, hello there, ladies and gents. How the devil are you? Andy here. After a bunch of audio, intercom and general vlogging horrors on my last trip down to the SW Motec Open Day with the Likeable Rider, if you haven't seen those videos, check the links up in the top right. I've decided it's time to have a bit of a refresh of my vlogging setup. In the last vlogging setup video that I made, everything was hanging off of an HJC RPHA 70, which was pretty straightforward. It's a full face helmet, everything kind of went on pretty easy. With this one, the RPHA 90S Carbon, we're faced with a few more challenges because I've decided to move up into the flip front territory, which means setup is going to be a little bit more challenging. Once again, if you haven't seen the RPHA 70 setup video, check the links in the top right and in the description. In this video, we're going to be working with intercom from the SENA Spider ST1, audio from the Zoom F2 audio recorder, and visuals from the Insta360 1RS and the good old trusty Gopro Hero 8. So I'm going to brush all of this stuff aside to begin with, and we'll start with the intercom. Now, I've decided it's time to enter back into the world of SENA, and I've gone with the SENA Spider ST1. Now, this is a particularly interesting intercom because it is a mesh-only intercom. The Bluetooth intercom features have been completely removed, as well as voice commands and radio, and to be honest, I never really use those anyway. And because of those features being removed, the price is really attractive. I picked this one up for 189 euros today, and as I've got a big trip coming up, bucket list stuff, heading to Norway with Ian, famous of the Scotland and Croatia tours, we wanted to have full mesh communications with each other without having to break the bank. So we've actually got two of these little beauties, and I'll be fitting this one onto Ian's Schubert C3 Pro in another video. Check the links in the top right to see that. And yes, you heard me right, I bought this with my own money. So if we get rid of the box, we've got the intercom itself, nice tidy little unit with its antenna for full mesh communication, job dial, standard SENA stuff, headphones, boom mic, wired mic with all of the little Velcro attachy jobbies, USB cable with USB-C, which I'm very happy to see. It's going to mean I can use the same cable to charge my cameras as it is to charge the unit. Foamy spaces in case you want to put the speakers closer to your ears, and two separate mounts. One of them is an adhesive backed one of them is a clippy that just slides up into the shell of your helmet. So I predict that for this installation, USB cable is unneeded, the foamy pads are unneeded. I'm going to go for the slippy clippy mount. I'm going to use the wired microphone because I'm going to use the boom one. I'm going to need the speakers and the little foamy microphone jobbies. So with that all unpacked, let's start by getting the mount into place, obviously on the left-hand side of the helmet, and that literally just slides in between the EPS liner and the outer shell of the helmet. And that has a really nice fit actually. It's very solid. It's rubber-backed in between the clip and the helmet, and it was also rubber-backed between the inside part of the clip and the inside of the shell. And that then means we can just clip the intercom into place, making sure, of course, we're not interfering with the opening of the shell, and also making sure that the sun visor works as well. Lovely. So now with the headset in place, to make things a bit easier to see, I'm going to completely remove the inner lining. Code number two. One thing I'm actually a bit disappointed about with the HJC and the quality of the build is that these little clips that are supposed to hold the cheek pads in, hooks into this little recess in the plastic collar there, have actually come away from the shell of the helmet, so they want to jump out. That's a bit disappointing. Right then. Take out the skull part as well. Now we can see into the shell of the helmet perfectly and all of the various recesses and things, because this helmet is actually pre-set up, not just for any intercom, it's actually set up for the SENA 20B, which is getting a little bit outdated now. It's basically a 20S with the fittings and things which go perfectly into these little recesses that are in the helmet already. Hopefully, some of those little recesses are going to be in just the right places to make this a bit easier, but we'll soon see. So now I need to unravel the headphone wiring loom, which is basically just two speakers, the socket to go into the headset itself, and a cable for you to choose which microphone you want to use. Now, these speakers are supposedly HD, but they are not the Harman Kardon speakers, which you'll find on the top of the range unit. So that's the 50S, the 50R, and the 50C, but we'll see just how good these really are. Now, the first thing I notice is that there is no Velcro already fitted into the recesses here for the speakers, which means I'm going to have to use the Velcro that's in the kit. And I'm very happy to see that they fit absolutely perfectly into those recesses. I'll give them a quick wipe with some alcohol. It's the good thing about Corona, isn't it, is that we've all got bottles and tubes and sachets of alcohol all over the house, so cleaning stuff just became a whole lot easier. Peel off the backing from the Velcro sticky pad, plonk that in there, give it a good bit of pressure to make sure it's stuck in place. Who doesn't love a good firm rub in their sticky place? And same again on the right hand side. So now we can take the speakers and stick them in. Now obviously one is longer than the other, so the shortest one is going to be on the side that the intercom is on. I'll plonk that into place. And that is a very, very snug fit in that little recess. possibly even a tiny bit big, but I think it's going to work. And then push the cable into this little cable channel, which is already there for the now ages-old 20B. Now run this speaker around the back of the helmet, hide those cables later. That then plonks into that recess, once again lining up the cable so I can run it into that channel there. Hide a bit of cable in between the seam between the two EPS liner bits here. And then I'm going to connect the microphone up. You can't get it the wrong way around because there's a little triangular black piece that goes into the cutout on the center clip there. I mean, unless you force it, but then you see you're just a bit of a thug. So now before I go any further, I'm going to connect this up to the headset itself. And the plug itself actually has little rubber ridges to give a nice seal. Slides into the bottom of the headset, and then this piece levers down, locks everything in place so that's not going to come out accidentally. And then you can also see there is the little hatch for the USB-C cable. And as far as I'm aware, you can actually keep this thing on power all the time and charge it as you're using it if you've got a really, really long day. But you're supposed to be able to get up to 11 hours of talk time with this thing. But of course, we will see how true that is once we get into testing. So, moving onwards, it looks like I've got enough cable that I could potentially have this microphone whichever side of the helmet I want to. So with that in mind, I know it's a tiny, tiny small amount, but I'm going to put the microphone on the right-hand side just to balance out some of the weight from the headset on the left-hand side. And it also looks like, although it doesn't completely go in there, some of the microphone will fit into this recess here that's meant for the 20B mic, and that means the mic itself is not going to jump around. And it's also not going to force out the cheek pad at this front edge where it's touching your face. I've also found with my experience with boom mics, once you put the cheek pads and stuff in, the microphone doesn't tend to move very much, but just to be belt and braces, I'm going to stick in the little Velcro tabby so that it doesn't move at all. Poke the boom mic into the little recess there. And we are pretty much ready to stick the lining back in. And I can also run this microphone cable into the same channel as the speaker cables are. So I'm going to try and lay all this cable as flat as I can. Put in the extra wind protection gaiter collar thingy that this helmet comes with, which I think is a really nice touch to close the gap at the back of your neck, get a bit less wind noise. See, the angle with trying to record a video doing this is pretty awkward, but anyway, it's all part of the job. So, clip that side in, being careful not to trap any of the cables in there. Clip that side in, feels good, there's no obvious lumps or bumps there. Slide the front piece into place, clap it into these super fiddly little tabs along the brow, and that's the skull cap of the helmet in place. So now I can put the right cheek pad back in. First of all, sliding this plastic collar in between the EPS liner and the shell of the helmet, making sure to clip that little recess bit into the knobbin. You have to give it a bit of a slide forward to get it to seat properly. Right, it feels like it's all in. I can pop the two poppers, at which point I realise I've forgotten to put the strap back in to Plonker. Needs to come through this little zippy open slot here. No idea why they put a zip in there. Could have saved the weight and the cost, I imagine, just by leaving that as an ordinary slit. That's what she said. That then pokes out here, goes through that loop on the nice soft backing to keep the strap away from your delicate, delicate chin. And do the poppers again. And that is that side fitted with the microphone hanging out, looking like it's going to be right in line pretty much with my gob. And with the finishing touch, take one of the foamy microphone thingies, slide that over, and then these barbs, hey Barb, are going to lock that in place, stop it from sliding away, and hopefully give me nice wind-free audio from my chops. Now over to the other side. All my cables and things are tucked out of the way. The main cable is disappearing off there. It's going to be going behind both of the foam liners. This is going to be nice and easy to fit this back, though remembering to stick the strap through this zippy slit again. I feel like the word slit is just a bit dirty, isn't it? This is the strap through, and this is where I realise I've got a bit of a problem because this plastic bit wants to chop through the cables here. So just when I thought I'd found all the uses for my beard scissors, cut a little slot there for the cable to hide in. And there we go. That's nicely in place. Everything looks lovely jubbly. So then poppers into place, stretch the edges of this little neck gaiter thingy onto the relevant Velcro tabs, and then jobs are good and the intercom is installed. I suppose now we should turn it on really. We do that by pushing the phone button in the back here and the jog dial together.
Hello, phone pairing.
It immediately goes into phone pairing mode. You can hear it beeping now, but I'm not going to go into the features and the details of this thing. A proper review will come after a proper good test on the Norway trip, so watch out for that. And I suppose really we should have a test for comfort and make sure everything is sitting correctly. Yep. Microphone in place, feels good. Getting no pressure at the back of the neck from the cables and the wires and things. Can close the front, microphone still in place. Open it up, stays where I put it. Very nice. Good stuff. So with the intercom out of the way, we can now move on to the cameras. Now, the keen-eyed among you would have already noticed I've already got a GoPro clip on the side of the helmet there, which allows me to have a side-mounted camera. But if you've been following the channel for any length of time, you'll know that I'm not a huge fan of the side-mounted camera, although I suppose it would balance out a bit of the weight, probably a bit too much on this side now, and also lots of wind drag. Now, although I'm going to keep that option because it's nice to have options, I would prefer to have a chin-mounted setup. And there are a whole raft of various little clips and mounts and things that you can get made for these helmets, specially shaped. Most of them are 3D printed. To be honest, I find them all a bit ugly, a bit clunky. I don't want something hanging off the front of my helmet. So what I'm actually going to do, I haven't seen anybody else do it, I'm sure somebody has, I'm going to stick a GoPro mounted clip thing onto this massive slidey vent cover here. It's a great big spot. Clip won't be getting in anybody's way. Now, obviously, this piece has a really pronounced ridge. Even a curved GoPro mount isn't going to be able to go around that using the ordinary 3M adhesive pad. So instead, what I'm going to do is employ my usual favourite Sugru. This stuff is absolutely magic. You can stick almost anything to almost anything, and I've also had no trouble at all getting it off. In fact, all of the mounts and stuff that I had Sugru'd onto the front of the RPHA 70 came off no trouble when it came to selling the helmet. The only downside is I've only got one black one and one white one, so I'm going to have to kind of try and do black around the edge, white in the middle, and then maybe get a black marker on any white bits to show through. Very professional. So first step, as ever, a bit of alcohol-y wipey stuff. Don't want any grease or finger fat affecting our adhesion. Same on the GoPro clip itself. Also very important, this always works best in my experience using the official GoPro clips because they have a completely closed back, whereas the cheap ones tend to have these holes in them, which means the Sugru is going to squeeze in between those holes and ruin how the clip actually connects up to the camera. These holes are actually there because it vastly simplifies the injection molding process, and that's why the GoPro ones are a bit more expensive. Break out my Sugru, black one first. Split into two pieces, roll that into a sausage, which I'm going to plonk around the edge of the GoPro clip there, just like Play-Doh. Far more annoying if you get it stuck under your nails and it goes hard though. Join those two bits together like that, same over here, so that hopefully none of the white will show through. Crack open my horribly inappropriately coloured white one. I'm just going to plonk in the middle there to fill in all the gaps that are left over. And then press into place on the vent clip there, trying to get it as straight as I can at this ridiculous angle. Not even close, Andy. Not even close. Right, and that's splurged all of the Sugru out around the edges. Then, holding this steady, push the Sugru to fill in all of the gaps. Give me a nice continuous join. Being very careful, of course, not to get any around the very edge of this vent here, because I still want to be able to use the vent. I mean, that difference of movement from the camera from there to there is going to make pretty much no difference at all to the view we're getting in the video. Smooth it down with my finger to get rid of the fingerprints, make it look a little bit more professional. And there we go, a nice, clean, tidy looking mount. Still use the vent just fine, even when there's a camera mounted. And it's a mount that I'm pretty sure will last for the rest of time. I have used Sugru many, many times on helmets and I've never had a problem. This stuff is magic. Now, of course, this is going to need about 24 hours, possibly a little bit more, before it's fully solid enough to really support a camera, especially when you're at any kind of speed with wind forces and you waggling your head all over the place. But just to give you an idea, slide in the GoPro clip. There we go. What do you reckon? I think it's pretty tidy. Camera isn't hanging too far out. I haven't got loads of scaffolding coming from a GoPro clip here, bringing the camera around to the front like I had on the old setup when I actually reviewed a standard RPHA 90 a couple of years ago, and there's actually minimal movement from that vent clip. Right, so that's the camera finished. Now we need to move on to vlogging audio. Now in the olden days, I used to rely quite heavily on the GoPro mic adapter, which would then be plugged into the camera directly with a microphone, sometimes some power at the other end, until this incredibly overpriced piece of started doing crazy things in Austria, and I decided I couldn't rely on it anymore. I lost audio on several days of my Austria trip, and it was a real pain. So now I rely almost entirely on this, the Zoom F2. This is a tiny, tiny little pocket recorder. This thing goes in any pocket. You barely notice it's there. It's got a really strong belt clip, and then you just run the microphone into your helmet. It's a bit of a pain because you have the microphone running from your pocket into the helmet, but everything with vlogging is a bit of a pain, so you have to make compromises. So this is actually one of two options that I've got for the audio in this new setup. The first option, which is the most minimal, the most tidy, is to pair the intercom with my iPhone, which I've already done using the SENA Motorcycles app, and then use the Voice Memos app, which just comes on the iPhone already built in, and I can actually press record And now, as I talk, the phone is actually recording the Bluetooth signal from the intercom directly into the phone, which also means you can record the audio from the other side of the chat. And this is something which I'm hoping to be able to do on the tour in Norway so that we can hear both sides of my banter between me and Ian and all of the waffle that we're going to be throwing out. And incidentally, the audio that you're hearing right now is coming from what is being recorded by the phone. Now, I've only been able to test this on iPhone. I've got no idea if it works on Android. And also, because of the noise cancelling and all the other processing that goes on, it's also possible that the sound might be a bit thin. Not sure how much exhaust noise and that kind of thing we're going to be able to get. So yeah, that's one option. The second option, which will give undoubtedly better audio quality, although with a bit more wind noise and a bit more ambient noise, which sometimes is what you want, sometimes is the bane of the job, is to take the lav mic, put that inside the cheek pad of the helmet. The microphone I've been using for years now is one from Speedlink. There'll be a link in the description below. I find that it's really good because, to start with, it's impossibly cheap. This cost me about £6. And also, it's a bit rubbish. It sounds a bit counterproductive, but the microphone is rubbish in that it's really insensitive. And what that means is it's very unlikely that when you're shouting into your microphone that it's going to clip and you're going to get high levels. And also that's great for rev bombs, high wind noise, opening and closing the helmet. This thing is so insensitive that even with the loudest noise, it never overdrives. You don't get that horrible crackling, clipping sound. It does mean that most of the time you need to bring the levels up in post, but once again, it's all par for the course with this business. Now, the Zoom F2 does come with its own microphone. It's actually the microphone that I'm using right now to record the audio for this video, but I found this to be great for stuff like this because it's really sensitive, but as soon as you put it in the helmet, it's far too sensitive and you get clipping all over the place when you raise your voice a little bit and with the wind noise and things. This is one of those cases where cheap really is better. Incidentally, if you're wondering how I'm recording the audio for this video, if I've got my F2 in my hand, I'm using the good old trusty Zoom H1 recorder to get the audio. Great piece of kit, but having this in your pocket versus having this in your pocket when you're on the bike, they're just worlds apart. With the added bonus that the F2 actually uses 32-bit floating point audio algorithms or some such nonsense, the easy version of that is that there is no level control. You don't have to set the level with this thing, you just hit record and all is good because you record everything, full dynamic range from all the quiet sounds, all the loud sounds, and as long as your microphone doesn't overdrive, you get everything without any clipping at all. And without having to worry that maybe you left the audio too low, maybe you put it too high. This thing takes care of everything. Once again, you have to deal with that in post and get your levels right, maybe a bit of compression, but that is, as with everything else, part of the motovlogging game, part of the faff we have to deal with. And what I tend to do with my microphones involves undoing a bit of what I've done here. Now, first of all, what I tried was actually just to have the microphone poking out the cheek pad like that, obviously with a wind muff on it, a dead cat. But I did find that with it like that, it was picking up too much noise from the wind actually rushing over the shell of the helmet. So by touching the shell, it was picking up a lot of the noise. So instead what I do now is just to poke that microphone into the little gap where the strap goes through, and then using my finger, push it round in the cheek pad. Microphone's here right now, to get it to the point where it's just about where my mouth will be. So the microphone is about here. Coil up a big bunch of the extra cable. The cable on this thing is absolutely massive. It is very annoying, which I tuck into the loose corner of the cheek pad there, and then use the cheek pad itself to hold that in place. Get my wind collar-y thing back into its position with the cable poking out at the back of the helmet there. And I can now connect that into the input of the F2, switch that on, hit recording without having to worry about any levels to set, stuff it in my pocket, and we're good to go. This is now the audio coming out of the F2, and just to give you a bit of a reminder, this is now the audio coming out of the SENA connected to the phone versus the sound coming from the H1 connected to the lav mic on my neck there. So a few different audio samples, but yeah, so this is how the microphone sounds in the cheek pad. Obviously, it's going to be completely different when you're out on the motorbike, in the wind. And with the front of the helmet shut and the visor closed, obviously everything becomes a lot more boomy and boxy. So there we go. That's the audio taken care of. Two different options. Obviously, the Zoom F2 means that I've got a cable hanging out of the helmet. It is what it is. You just have to deal with it. The wireless option is a lot cleaner, but as you've seen, the audio quality is not so great. And I have actually had a couple of times with the phone where if I received a phone call, sometimes even a text message, where the phone would disconnect from the microphone, therefore ending the recording. And obviously with regard to the thin sound, another option is to get one of these, bung this in the pocket of your jacket, pick up all the ambient noise, all the exhaust sound, and then just mix the two together so you've got perfectly clear, no wind, noise reduced audio coming from the SENA, and then all of your ambient, nice sounding stereo stuff from the recorder in your pocket. So with the intercom, the camera, and the audio taken care of, there's only one thing left on the table to finish this whole thing off. That's the dark visor. which on these helmets, the HJC RPHAs, is insanely easy to change. Just flip up the visor, pull this little clip, the visor pops off, same on the other side over here, and the visor is off. And I'm going to leave the pin lock on the inside of the clear visor, because I tend to work on the assumption that if the weather's good enough for a dark visor, it's probably also good enough that you aren't going to worry too much about the steaming up. That's a personal preference. Your mileage may vary. So we take the new visor, let's see what I'm doing, but yeah, line it up, click, click, the visor is on. So there you go, that's my new vlogging setup with the HJC RPHA 90S carbon flip front helmet using the SENA Spider ST1 intercom, the Insta360 One RS, the Gopro Hero 8 if I wanted to have a crazy double camera setup. You could even have this one pointing backwards if you really wanted to get all angles covered. Plus, microphone fitted into the cheek pad to put the audio into the Zoom F2 recorder in my pocket, and all finished off just for the styles with the dark visor. So, hope you've enjoyed this video, hope you found it interesting or somehow useful. If you did, please do give it a thumbs up. And if you didn't like it, please do tell me why not. Give it a thumbs down if you really, really need to. Otherwise, I've been Andy. Look forward to seeing this setup in action in the Norway trip coming up very soon. I'm really looking forward to this trip. It is going to be proper bucket list stuff. So until next time, I've been Andy, and I'll see you out there. Ta-ra!